I'm Jon DelVecchio, and I have a small motorcycling school. I've been an MSF coach in the past, and I focus more on cornering skills, that kind of thing. But this was a subject that I had talked about in 2015, and I was really gung ho about it. Actually, at the time, I was it was right before I started my school street skills. I was still an MSF coach, and I had come across this information from various sources, and I put it together in this presentation, which I've tried to slim down for something that could be done over a Zoom for people. But I really think that there's some good information in here that really has changed my traffic behaviors, primarily with how to use my eyes and to stay out of trouble. What I will say is that the MSF basic rider course really does an excellent job of teaching street strategies. But this is kind of like a next level sort of presentation. I had read an article aimed for motorcyclists, written by a Royal Air Force pilot in the United Kingdom, and there were similarities that he thought between riding a motorcycle, even operating a car, and what fighter pilots, how they train them to spot enemies, frankly. And for us, we don't really have enemies on the road. I wouldn't call our other roadway users our enemies. It's just they are a threat. And so you could take some of these concepts and put them together. So the fighter pilot article was a real aha moment. Plus, at the time, I was reading a lot of articles in Motorcyclist magazine. You might remember Keith Code used to write a article every month in Motorcyclist, and he would put vision articles in there as well. And all these things were kind of coming at me from different directions. Also, what is really behind the I didn't see him or her. I didn't see the motorcyclist. And hopefully tonight, at the end of this, you have some simple things that can improve your vision, operating both cars and motorcycles, and you'll kind of get into the mind of those other people on the road with you. So the overview image here basically just talks about how we process images. So the main ways we process images have to do with our central vision, which you can see in this picture is a more high res type of image, and then our peripheral vision. And those are the two areas that I'm going to focus on as far as our vision goes and how it plays into our operating these vehicles. So how the presentation goes tonight is I'll just present a concept, and then problems with that concept, and then solutions. So the first thing we talk about, the central vision. The fovea part of the is a part of the eye that we see high resolution images, details. This is where we sort of see that hazard. We make sense of what we're seeing. We give our brain a chance to make sense of what we're seeing. And if you look at these pictures, the pictures, it's a very narrow cone that really comes out in front of us. And if you take a look, just when you're driving, you can just see that car in front of you, and then the peripheral vision. And we all know that there are peripheral hazards. There's things just outside of our central vision, foveal view, that can present themselves in front of us, right? Now, the problems with the central vision or whatnot is that it requires we move our eyes to see details that we need our brain to process. So if I'm going to approach a street sign, let's say it's a warning sign, I could see a yellow diamond shaped sign, but I'd have to sort of focus my eyes on it to see what the hazard is. Is it a deer crossing? Is it a light up ahead traffic signal? And so we have to move our eyes to get that detail. The central vision is also poor at detecting movement. So if there's a car around us, it's not as effective. Same thing is there's a deer running in the field next to our vehicle or just something moving. So that's not what the central vision really is supposed to do. It's supposed to give us those details to make decisions. Now, one thing that's kind of a really unfortunate affliction that some people have, this could be us as motorcyclists or the other people on the road, is the macular degeneration, where you can see the difference that happens in the central vision there. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know what you can do to prevent this or whatnot. And that's why you'll see in the solutions problem, I put see a doctor, to make sure your eyes are working right. But you may have great vision, but other people on the road, people you ride with, may have this issue here. I think I have some acquaintances that have been sidelined by this at the coffee shop I go to. So the solutions to this one is we should frequently jump or sweep our eyes across the entire field of view, which just means get your eyes moving. So if you've taken any course before in motorcycling, they'll say get your eyes moving, look for things. Okay, that's what we teach in driver ed, which I'm also a driver ed teacher. Okay, part-time, and so we teach the kids they have to move their eyes around, because you just can't see everything from that one central cone down the middle of the road. And then see an eye doctor just to make sure things are on the up and up. Peripheral vision is your awareness of visual cues outside your immediate point of focus. So what this basically means is we need our peripheral vision to detect movement so that we can direct our central vision to see what is that thing. So if something moves to the right of us, our peripheral vision will notice that, and then it'll direct our eyes to that car backing out of the driveway. But it's low detail. I mean, think about where you're sitting right now. I'm assuming you're looking at a screen, and you're reading the words on the screen, you're using your central vision. But now if you expand outward and just kind of take in what's coming, and I have a lamp over here, I see a piece of furniture next to me here, we can actually be conscious of our peripheral vision right now as we're sitting here. No cure for macular degeneration. Someone came in there. Yeah, that's unfortunate, and I hope it's something that's infrequent out there. So when we come to the peripheral vision in driving, here are the problems with the peripheral vision. Smaller objects make it harder to gain our attention. So if there's a rock flying at us from a vehicle to the left of us, okay, driving down an expressway or whatnot, it's going to be harder to see that because it's a smaller object. Whereas a truck, okay, coming towards us will be easier to see, just because size is important. Size matters when it comes to peripheral vision. The higher your speed, okay, so the faster you're going, will constrict that peripheral vision. You can see pictures down there. The two at the bottom right there, you can see it 15 miles an hour versus 30 miles an hour. We're just incapable of processing images is that fast a pace. Now, this is an important thing that we teach. I teach in driver's ed about the cell phone use. One of the problems with using your phone when you're driving or riding a motorcycle is that it constricts your peripheral vision. So you figure, just to make a comparison, you look at the left picture there, that could be you riding at 15 miles an hour. Then the right side picture could be you riding your motorcycle at 15 miles an hour, but you're making a phone call. All right. And so again, I think, we've all probably made a phone call, okay, while we were driving, and even maybe on our motorcycle with these Sennas and things like that. But just understand, it's giving you more of a tunnel vision when you do that. We're going to talk about convergence a little bit later in the presentation. Convergence is basically when two vehicles objects are coming together, they're converging at a steady pace towards one another. It's very hard for us to detect that movement. So, there's solutions to that as well, which I'm a little ahead of myself on this with this bullet here. As we age, it constricts your peripheral vision. What happens is we can see 180 degrees is usually our field of view. As we age, that 180 degrees closes up. So here are the solutions on, to the things right there. Move our eyes and our head so that we can aim towards things that we might want to see in high res detail. Now, high vis and high contrast gear like white helmets and bright motorcycles and things like that will help to get attention. We'll talk about that. A lot of people figure, well, I wear high vis everything, so I'm visible in traffic. Well, yeah, the part of the other people on the roads ability to notice something does go up, but it's really not, it doesn't take care of all the problems with vision, as we'll see in a little while throughout the presentation. You can add lighting to improve contrast so it's easier for others to see you. Again, lighting is going to help you be recognized more. Other roadway users might pick you up in their peripheral vision easier. This is a tough one. Not so much the limiting cell phone calls, but my friends and I ride around with Sennas. I find it when I'm with one other person and we're using our Senna communicators, I find that, frankly, I'm just concentrating less because it's kind of like that constant conversation. When we're in a group of, let's say, 6 people, 5 or 6 people, you have less, you're on less as far as like your speaking goes. But again, those conversations can decrease, the ability for you to pick up those peripheral hazards. Now, when we're riding, people can shout out, oh, there's a pothole here, there's a deer on the right. There's some benefits to the communicators as well, which is why I think many of us use them. This is something people just don't want to hear. I don't want to hear it myself when people tell me as well, just to slow down, right? Because if we look at, speed is a problem. And I think I talked about in a previous couple weeks ago, I did a Zoom on motorcycle crash ratings and things like that. And I just talked to, we talk about, the speed that you crash is a big problem. Well, the speed you're going will make it harder to see things, right? So I can tell you firsthand, I've missed very important things due to my speed in the past. Had I been going slower, even 10 miles an hour slower, perhaps things would have turned out differently. So that's important with regards to your peripheral vision picking up hazards. You can vary your lane position and speed. They talk about that in the MSF course. That is still vital. Eye exercises is something I put in here. It's a little harder to do them than it sounds. Like they can work out on their treadmill. They can do all kinds of things. But actually doing eye exercises, which was one of the recommendations of Keith Code in one of his Motorcyclist articles. I tried it for a while and I just didn't really do it as much. But if you're having trouble with your vision, you might want to do eye exercises. The next concept are what are referred to as fixations. And so a fixation is a very short pause when your brain processes images. So let's say you come to a T intersection. If you look where those red circles are, that's where the person would be fixating in the middle. Then they'll move their eyes to the left into that circle, and then move their eyes to the right into that circle, then maybe back to the center. And so we use fixations, and that's how we gain the details we need to navigate through the world, right? Now, where do we come in? Where our fixations can cause problems, because we can miss hazards between fixations, and we can miss peripheral hazards. So for example, if I'm just looking straight ahead, I may miss hazards that appear in my peripheral vision because I'm using my central vision, and we might miss hazards in between those spots. You can see the lines in between where there could be hazards. So the solution to these things are, we can sweep or track our eyes. So how I differentiate the two things is, when we scan, we sort of move our eye and refocus, move our eye and refocus, move our eye. Okay, these fixations. A sweep or a track is if you were, following your doctor's pen or something like that, or you're watching a car drive down the road from your front porch, you never lose focus on it. Okay. Whereas there is a delay, a focus, refocus cycle that happens every time we make a jump with our eyes to fixate in these positions. So maybe try sweeping or tracking if possible. And then one of the other tips was to increase your fixation points, right? So if you're looking at 3 spots, maybe you consciously look at 5 spots, or you just increase the number of places you're fixating in the efforts to hope you pick up something that could be a hazard. And again, this has to do just keep those eyes moving. If you keep the eyes moving, you're going to see those, you have a better chance of picking up those things. And the saccade is basically a rapid eye movement. When we go from one fixation to the next. One of the things that they say about this is, like, if you look into a mirror, okay, and you try to watch your eyes move, you really can't see your eyes move back and forth because it shuts down the little blind spot between the two. And so the saccade movement is rapid eye movements, but they hide things from us. When the eyes are moving, things are happening that we cannot see. And so with the saccade, if we're not tracking the object, okay, like following that pen with our eyes and keeping focus on it, other than that, they just dart around randomly looking for things. And we might consciously look for certain things on the road, like look for your exit when you're on your motorcycle, or look at different sides of the intersection. But in a lot of instances, you're probably sitting there, with the exception of looking at the screen, you're probably moving your eyes in random directions as well. It's just part of the way we interact with our world. So the saccade is like the line in between the fixations. Okay, for our purposes here, that's the portion of the vision that we would call the saccade mask or whatever, from the one point to the next. During the jumps, the brain shuts down. Okay, so that means when you're moving your eyes, like for example, if you just looking at the screen, just look to your computer, or look on a 3-foot space distance to your left and right. When you move your eyes, there's a temporary blindness there. It's so short you probably don't even recognize it, but that temporary shutting down of the brain, it cuts off all images to the brain. What we do is the brain fills in gaps. It's that simple. So if we're looking at this picture here, we fixate middle, left, right, and our brain sort of fills in what we expect to see, and we assume between those things. And that's how we navigate. So here are the problems with the saccades that we have, our rapid eye movements, okay? We can jump over important hazards. Take a look at that. Let's say you come up to an intersection and you want to pull out and you want to make a left to where this motorcyclist is coming from. If you stop at the stop sign and you make a fixation point from looking straight when you come to the stop sign, and then you move your eyes to where that red circle is, and then back straight, you won't see, you're less likely to see the motorcyclist, right? So you may just pull right out in front of the motorcyclist or UPS truck or something like that, because it's not size. I mean, if you're blind when your eyes move. If it's a tiny little thing or a huge thing, when your eyes are moving, you can't see things. Also, a faster moving head. So if I were to rapidly turn my head as I'm using my eyes to move back and forth, will mask what's in the saccade even more. Okay, it'll hinder your ability to see even more, because your head's moving around, your eyes are moving around, and you can't make sense of your environment as easily. And one of the things we have to understand too about saccades is that it's natural. Okay, it's like a natural eye movement. So even if you have good vision and you're paying attention to what you're doing, it's still a major impairment that we can miss a lot of things. The high vis and the extra lights to attract attention. But what the research showed was that Even a flash of light is you cannot see in a saccade. So if someone's moving their eyes when a light flashes, they'll miss that. So just because you have lights and high vis on, under normal circumstances, one's peripheral vision might identify you as something it should pay attention to, but that's only if it's not in a saccade movement in that blind area. So these are basically the problems with it. So the solutions, well, just left, right, then left again, just like, make that, be patient, make that stop. Does everybody make a full stop all the way in their car? Probably not. But again, we're not running into things more because they're not there. It's not that we see them. So we don't see something. So we go, sweep versus jump. So we can try to like sweep our eyes rather than do the saccade movements. Okay. We could try to use a tracking sweep, which is, again, you don't lose focus like you would with a saccade jump. Instead of just looking left, right, then left again, maybe you do a left far, a left middle, left near, you actually fixate 2 or 3 times. This will also give your peripheral vision a chance to pick up any movement, because it would probably take a little longer to do the 3 fixations versus the 1. Okay. Make deliberate actions. This come to complete stop, come to a stop, pause, and give your peripheral vision a chance to pick up those hazards, that movement. Because we have these hazards right in front of us we can't see. Don't rely on high vis and lighting. Change your lane positions, okay, and speed. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, to avoid being lost in others saccades. And again, slowly move your head as you observe your surroundings. So the thing about following closely in a car or on a motorcycle is that most of the time there isn't a problem. Okay, so we're 1 second behind, we're right on the bumper of the car, or 1 or 2 seconds behind the car in front of us. There is no problem. We get where we're going. Everybody else is doing it, but it can really be a problem to following too closely. Now, the MSF will teach this. We teach this in driver's ed about the following distance. The nice thing about your following distance here is it works at any speed. So if you're going slower or faster or anything in between, it's still 3 seconds is the appropriate, or the 4 seconds. And what happens here, if you look at this picture, the motorcyclist, since they're 3 seconds behind, if the green car stops, they won't have they're less likely to run into the car. But also think about a motorcyclist 2 seconds behind a FedEx truck. How much can they really see? Probably not much, right? So what I try to teach my driver ed kids in the car is I say, listen, watch what happens when we slow down and we put 5 or 6 seconds in front of us. You actually see the vehicle in front goes from this big to this big, and your field of vision opens. And now Steve mentioned it's hard to maintain distance in heavy traffic. That is true. What I'll typically do, and tomorrow night I got a 5-hour course where I'm teaching new drivers in New York how to get their license through my driving school. But I'll talk about following distance a lot in that class. And what I'll tell them is, even during rush hour, so nobody's going like, okay, during rush hour, maybe people are going 55, 70, 80 miles an hour, depending on where you live. But you can always control that distance in front of you. And yes, people will come in, but if you stay to the right and you kind of back off and go slower when they pull in there, you can have that space in front of you. It's just something I would suggest trying. Like when Steve says heavy traffic, like, I don't know if he's talking, LA traffic, or like something we might get here in Rochester, New York, which is kind of like, it's smaller than Buffalo, right down the road. But okay, DC has, it's pretty crazy there. That is tough. You might even hear sometimes that I've heard people say for advanced riders, maybe go a little faster than traffic so you can kind of have more control over that. But following distance, anything you can do to give yourself more room in front of you is going to help. I will say that if I'm in the left lane and I'm slowing down to create more following distance in front of me, that usually pisses people off more. And I see people having more trouble with that. It even irritates me more when I see slower traffic, like in the passing lanes. But typically in the slower lanes or to the right, it's more expected that people might be going slower, and that might help. We can't see in front of us. I remember driving home. I was driving, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving up 81 or something in Virginia. And myself and this other car were passing an 18-wheeler. And I said, I'm going for it. You know, we're going to pass this 18-wheeler. And I was closer than I really wanted to be behind him. And this was like a half hour into a 6-hour or 7-hour drive. And I just barreled right into a dead deer carcass. The two of us hit it because we went to pass the truck at the same time. And I was right on his tail because I'm going to pass this truck too. Let's just get it done here, guys, you know? And of course, he hit the deer carcass, and bam, bam, I hit the same thing. Now, had I been on a motorcycle, that impatience could have cost me a little bit more. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying I'm always 4 to 5 seconds behind, but it is something to think about, because here are the solutions that, you know, it's kind of like eat your broccoli. You know, we all know, go to speed limit, slow down, give yourself following distance. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not being judgmental if someone says, no, I agree, I got to be right close to people, and I got to make more aggressive moves in traffic. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then by all means, you're comfortable doing that, do it. What I'm saying here is that the time and space factor of hazards, it just isn't, you know, the odds are against you when you're closer. And so just something to think about, right? So if you are on your motorcycle in DC, maybe it's probably, I don't know if you can lane split there, probably not. And so if there's benefits to parking and other things like that, great. But if there's no real benefit to take your motorcycle versus your car, it might be in a heavy traffic situation like that, it might be worth doing. But again, people make their own personal decisions. Now, when you talk about vision, no vision talk would be complete without target fixation. You know, I kind of would rather have just left it out, because most people that would listen to this are avid riders. They understand what target fixation is, but I just want to cover a few points before I get into some other things. So obviously you want to point your nose in the direction that you want to go, look where you want to go, that kind of thing. And we've all heard that before. What does it really mean? Well, it just means to direct your central vision in a way that allows you to I guess, to set your path and give you a chance to pick up hazards in your peripheral vision. Now, one of the things that I assumed as a newer rider was that I cannot move my eyes from the exit, because they're telling me if I move my eyes from where I want to go, I'm going to go that direction. And the more I've been riding and the more I looked into the stuff, like where I'm presenting today, you can move your eyes to get those fixation points, to pick up more detail, and it's not going to change your direction if it's a quick fixation. And that's what the third bullet is. You know, it suggests that, you know, in my mind, if you are moving your eyes around, it's going to impact your ability to stay on a forward path that you want to go, which I'm not sure if you think of it that way or you originally thought of it that way. All I can say is that that's what I thought as a newer rider, probably through teaching MSF courses for a while, until I got more information about this. Target fixation is more of a direction change tool, whether it's intentional or not. So if we look for the exit, it'll bring us there. And if we fixate too long on the guardrail, it'll drag us in that direction. So remember, we could have positive and negative outcomes from target fixation. We can pick good targets. And if we do that, then we're riding properly. And again, practice this when you're driving in your car. Try to do more quick fixations on the sides of the road when you're just driving to work or things like that. See what you can pick up. What I would tell people on coaching tours, I have done coaching tours with groups, and I would say when we talk about this, I would say, all right, I want you to just, as we're riding between now and the next stop, try to pick out things that don't fit into the natural environment as you're driving along. And so we would be going past fields, and then there's a, like a fence with a tire on it or something. And then I'd say, well, did you guys notice anything that didn't blend into the natural environment? And just a way to get you thinking about looking at what's out there. And again, the scanning provides more information. More information is going to give you more confidence. Missing hazards that lead to a mishap because you're not looking for them. You are when you're target fixating just straight in front of you and you don't want to move your eyes around, you're now dependent on if your eyes randomly land in a place that has a hazard for you to process instead of a conscious effort. Not processing clues as much, could be fixating on the wrong thing. So solutions, we call it in driver ed an orderly visual search pattern. So generally you're looking straight ahead, and you do this already. You don't even know it when you're on your bike, but you're driving, you're looking ahead. You check your speedometer, you look ahead. You check a mirror, you look ahead. All right. You're looking ahead most of the time, but the pattern is you're checking other things with quick glances in an orderly visual search pattern. Okay, scan the entire field of view. Okay, it compensates for your peripheral vision, which is weak at those speeds. Okay, so you're at higher speeds, your peripheral vision can't be trusted as much to pick up details. So if we can move our eyes, we're more likely to see something. Yeah, glances work, even if cornering. And then, of course, the clues, right? You see a deer sign, expect them. Longer fixations where you want to go, especially when you're in trouble. Has anyone ever heard of, someone gets into a collision with a motorcyclist? It's like, I didn't see him. I didn't see the motorcyclist, right? That's like the number one thing they say. So as I said earlier, the high vis in lights just gets attention, but it's not good for judgment of speed and distance. So if you're wearing your high vis, you got even a light that's flashing and all these lights you paid for. It might get their attention, but it still is not good for judgment and speed and distance. If you are an MSF coach or you've taken a recent MSF class, in the latest update, I remember them focusing more on a concept called presentation. And this was making yourself more, what's the word I'm thinking of? Making yourself more present. Okay. Making yourself more easily observed. Okay. So put yourself in places, do things that make it almost impossible not to see you. That's the general concept behind the presentation of the MSF basic rider course. You could probably look that up if you want more information on that. But the thing I'm going to show you in the next slide with the problems and solutions has to do with probably one of the most important things I've ever learned on riding a motorcycle in traffic. This video, maybe you've seen it before, but I was shocked that it only had like 250,000 views on YouTube. I can't believe that it's that low, because some guy will put on a video of how to do U-turns or something like that, and it's got 1 million views. So I'm going to talk about on the next slide. You want to have contrast in your background, because it helps you effectively judge speed and distance. So it's called the SMIDSI from UK. Sorry, mate, I didn't see you. Okay, that's what they call this. I'm going to show you the video. Some of you might have seen it, but This video changed my life. Maybe not the video itself, but the concept, the images I saw, and how we can create contrast in our background movement. Remember, this isn't going to be more of the back roads cornering type of thing. I mean, it could, you're coming around a curve in the twisties and there's a T intersection where you see a car there. But this is when we're interacting with other highway users primarily, where you're going to want this, especially in DC where you are and that kind of thing. So obviously, the problem with the I didn't see him is the I didn't see him or her consequence. Okay. It usually happens after a collision happens. So the solutions, we could use the high vis and effective lighting, even though, again, it's hard to say I didn't see him if the guy's, on fire with lights and all kinds of, high vis things. Okay. I'm not saying it's pointless to wear these things, but this was the big one. Okay, creating a contrasting background. So there's,
as I'm riding towards the car, what I'm looking for is background movement relative to the car. If there's no background movement, then the chances are that I'm in a Smidsy situation and I need to start thinking about a Siam maneuver. However, if we do see background movement behind the car, then we know that the Smidsy is less likely. Back on the road then, the reason we use the Siam is to make it easier for us to be seen.
So what they do is they call it a Siam. They have a special acronym for this movement where you see the motorcyclist.
From the rider's point of view, if we see background moving behind the car, then we know that from the car's point of view, we are moving against our background. This makes us much easier to see, and it stops the car from pulling out in front of us. If the background isn't moving behind the car, we must perform the Siam maneuver. The strong weaving motion breaks us clear of the background and makes us much easier to see.
Okay, so that's the Siam maneuver he talks about. And personally, I think that's excessive. I don't do that maneuver. Okay. I'm not like you could see he's like really weaving a lot, but I might change my lane position. And what I'll do as I approach vehicles is I will make it so that I don't have
background movement,
that non-contrasting background. So whenever you're with other people on the road and you're looking at those other vehicles, if you see that the background is not contrasting, then you need to kind of make some sort of move, change a lane position, slow down, do something that will make visible to you a contrasting background, because in turn they will have the contrasting background.
If there's no background movement, then the chances are that I'm in a Smidsy situation and I need to start thinking about a Siam maneuver.
Okay.
However, if
you see that, so
we do see background movement.
So just changing the angle with which we interact with other cars, we can create that. Now, could the person still pull out in front of us? Sure. But the idea is they're less likely to. There's one other thing I really wanted to show about the size of the motorcycle. What he shows in this part of the video is the size of a motorcycle is so narrow that it looks about the same size to other roadway users until they're right on top of us. So you could see as this motorcycle is approaching us, and it really hasn't changed its size. It's still occupying roughly the same amount of room until it's right in front of these other people. The biggest point I wanted to make about this video here is when you're in traffic, make the background of other vehicles, make it contrast and slide behind the vehicle by your direction changes or your use of the lane. And that gives them a better chance of seeing you. Put your motorcycle near the edges where people might not go. Try to anticipate where other cars don't want to go and try not to be there. But the biggest thing, those are two other things that aren't really as important, I don't think, is what I said earlier. You got to create that contrasting background. When it comes to sun glare, the lights really can be not very helpful if the sun is too high, is too low in the if it's too low in the sky, because the sun's going to blind the people moreover than your light. So just consider when the sun is low, east or west, people behind you, they may not see your motorcycle stop if they're being blinded. And if the sun is in someone's face, they may turn left in front of you easier. Quickly, I'm going to run through why the cars that people drive can be problematic to us, and what we can do to compensate for the design in cars. These are, you can actually see the difference in the window sizes of the cars. So from the 1970s to modern day, we see a lot of these design trends for various reasons, which I don't need to get into, but the windows are getting smaller on our vehicles. You can actually just watch the trend here from 1971 to 2012. You can actually see the trend of the door getting taller and the window getting smaller. And we think, well, this really probably doesn't make a big difference. Well, when I gave this presentation, one of the people that was in the audience said, I'm a bus driver, a school bus driver. And he said they're doing the exact opposite with school bus design. They're making the windows even bigger and that kind of thing. And so we in the cars, we're making them smaller for various reasons, which I'm not going to get into. It's just the cars people are driving. Here's just another comparison, okay, of, early cars and more recent models. And you can see what's happening to the size of the pillars. You can see what's, they put airbags in the pillars now. They make the roof stronger if the car rolls over. So there's, side impact crashing is better on some of these cars because they have more formidable sides. So one of the concepts that when you drive in your car, or when people when people around you are driving in their cars, there's this thing called windscreen zoning, where yes, the windshield is a certain size, but we don't look at this part of it, because like the way our eyes are next to each other, it's easier to look up and down to the edges than it is left and right. So you can just take off about 2 or 3 inches of the windows in cars because they're less effective for people to use. And if you take a look here at this pillar, now this 5-inch pillar or 3-inch pillar, whatever it is, now has become twice as wide or maybe more because of the zoning effect. Okay. Also, you can hide vehicles. Motorcycles specifically can be hidden in these cars today. To compensate, Ron, for the big blind spots, they're now putting what in the mirrors? Lights to tell you there's someone in your blind spot, because they know that these designs make it harder to see who's in your blind spot. So we're not fixating near the edges. They block our view of things. So the problem means we can lose vehicles in our windshield framing. This is me in my car, one of my cars. Can you guys see the motorcycle? Now the Honda Fit has a kind of a strange little triangular window there. So I almost kind of cheated when I took this picture, but oftentimes we can lose things. There's a motorcyclist, and I specifically got myself lined up to take this picture just to illustrate at the time. This was 2015 or whatever. That's actually 2 people on two Harley Davidsons are 2 lanes over. Okay, it looks like they're 2 lanes over, but those are 2 big bikes with riders on them that are completely like insulated from my view. Now, just something to think about. Our eye port could have a similar effect to the windshield zoning left and right. Okay, so we don't really have trouble with our windshield or our face shields looking up or down. Okay, the way our eyes are put together, but left or right, we might not use that like inch at the edge of our eye ports. So some solutions are obviously stay out of blind spots, is as much as you possibly can. stay out of blind spots, speed up, slow down, move over, do what you got to do. When you're in your car, what you should be doing and what other drivers should do is you're actually moving your upper body. This is something that there's an initiative to get people to actually move their bodies to look through the windows in driver education. And of course, just, turn your head more on your motorcycle rather than relying on just what you see through your eye port when you're looking straight ahead. This was as life-changing on a motorcycle for me as the Smidsy video. Convergence is for the fighter pilots, if they're engaged in a dogfight, they may not see an enemy out in their peripheral view, because when they converge, towards each other, there's a fixed, it's a fixed point, like in our brains, that we don't detect the movement of it because its relationship to us never changes. And so if you think of two cars coming towards each other, one is from the bottom here, one's coming from the right. If their speed converges them with no interruption, you're less likely to see that thing, which means if we're on our motorcycles and we're converging with a car, they may not spot us. And of course, at this intersection here, you're going to see one's going to have probably a stop sign, but there's other instances with merges and things like that where the convergence, neither person has to stop. Figure someone backing out of a driveway, it could be convergence in that situation. And so this is a major concept. So what the problem is, as I mentioned, when there's no relative movement converging, it's difficult to detect in the peripheral view, even in a convertible, apparently. So, one other thing too, let's go back to the this here, the windshield. Now, let's say I'm converging with a motorcycle or a UPS truck on two roads and we're coming together. Not only am I less likely to spot it in my peripheral vision through the window because we're converging, but if that motorcycle or that UPS truck is in my windshield frame as I converge with it, I won't see it at all, because it'll consistently be behind that frame or that pillar between the front and back, the front and back doors. So the convergence, how we help with this, what we do here is we obviously slow as you enter intersections, but you disrupt any converging vehicle like peripheral vision trickery. So if you see you're converging with a car and it's like a steady convergence together, what you need to do is either slow up or slow down, speed up or slow down to disrupt the convergence. So if we're converging together, one could slow as the other one continues, or one could speed up as the other one continues. Disrupt the convergence there and make irregular movements. Now, I'm not saying to, be foolish, okay? And like one person said earlier, they were concerned they might get, in trouble for stunting or reckless driving or something like that, or doing something unsafe. So we don't want to do anything, over the top. It's just try to break up some of that convergence. So really the big things for me here that tonight, some takeaways would just be that contrasting background movement and try to break up the convergence, when you see it happening. And you could do this in your car too, or any vehicle you operate, your bicycle. Okay. And I'm sure there's people out here that like to ride their bicycles, 20 miles, or they do those bicycle races too, and things like that. So these are things that can help you not only on your motorcycle, but, in those other situations. So that was basically the presentation. The bottom line here is there's car design problems and human vision flaws that are conspiring against us. The human vision flaws, there is something on the horizon that is good news, though, for these things. There's technology out there that's vehicle to vehicle communications. We do know that certain cars, if a car pulls in front of a motorcyclist or something, or a bicyclist, these cars are stopping automatically. I mean, some of you may have cars that have like a radar controlled cruise control. So when you get close to the car in front of you, it sort of backs off. And I don't have that advanced of a cruise control system, but I rented a car, and I actually was into someone came into my lane, and normally it just kind of slows down gradually, but this person came in at such a rate where the car actually applied the brakes for me. And at first it was a little unsettling. I didn't expect it, but the cars are starting to have sensors that are able to pick up these impending collisions. We could get there to the point where our vehicles do save us from our own mistakes from these visual problems, but I wouldn't count on it this spring, okay? Or the next few riding seasons. And even if people are looking for us, they can miss us. But generally speaking, we have to be the catalyst towards safety when it comes to interacting with these people on the road, because I mean, yeah, there's cell phones and other distractions, but I mean, it's just vision problems, and we can't change the cars people are driving. So we just have to be super vigilant and apply some of those things.